Without further ado, thank you so much. I'm really excited to hear your story, Mr. Brian Hanlon. Thank you. And can you hear us without the mic?
Yeah.
In the back, can you hear us? Well, here, you hold that. If they
Can you hear me?
We're good?
Yes.
All right. Awesome. Well, no, thanks again so much for being out here. So let's just jump right into it. I really like to start off knowing about where you grew up, kind of what your background was. Did you have a lemonade stand growing up? Did you always want to be an entrepreneur? So maybe just tell us, a little bit about that.
Sure. First, I do want to say I am humbled that all the things that you could be doing down the street here at the Epicenter and everywhere else, that you guys actually came out here to listen to me. I'm truly humbled. Thank you very much. So, to answer your question, kind of like Chris over here, I grew up in the middle of nowhere on a farm in the middle of Missouri. I called it 11 miles from nowhere because the nearest city was 11 miles away. So no lemonade stands for me because my nearest neighbor was about a mile down the road. So it would not have been successful. There's not enough scale to a lemonade stand. I did do a lot of interesting things on the farm. The pregnancy check cattle. Anybody done that? I have, yes. Put up hay in 90-degree heat. Take a machete to the weeds and the soybeans. All right, so lots of fun. Anybody? Yes? No? There you go. See, that's hard work, right? It is hard work. So that's how I got my start. The only thing I knew coming out of that atmosphere, my father wanted me to be the fourth generation farming that land. And all I knew was I do not want to be a farmer. I knew nothing else, but I'm not going to take over the farm. Which was unfortunate, but still in my family. If anybody wants to farm, I got a farm in Missouri.
So what kind of pivoted you from that moment of knowing you don't want to be a farmer to kind of diving into technology?
So that's a long story.
We got plenty of beer and plenty of time.
So my father was convinced that I was going to be a farmer until I went to college and I was getting a marketing degree, right? And he said, "Well, that's great because we need somebody to market the grain." A little different. My senior year of college, he realized that's not how, that I was not coming back. I had a job in the city and not making it back to the farm. He literally sold all the equipment and leased the farm out to a big farming operation, and that was the end of him farming the land as well. So I went to work just like everybody else coming out of college. My 9-to-5 sales job. First job, made a mistake working for a family-owned company, right? Which it was the reason why I took the job was because it offered me the highest salary, right? But there was no future, right? So if I had the wrong last name, I needed to have the last name Berkeley, which was the family that owned the company. Then I might have been able to rise up in the ranks, but there was no future for me other than being a sales rep for that company. And so I, no idea. My entrepreneurial spirit didn't kick in. I was ambitious, but mostly about where the next beer was going to come from instead of being an entrepreneur. So I envy a lot of you young folks that know what you want to, that you want to do something, because it took me till I was 30 to figure out that I was going to be an entrepreneur.
So you mentioned it took you till 30. What did you do from college until 30, and what made you kind of pivot and say, okay, I'm going to take the risk and go be an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so the first, the sales thing, I was reasonably successful at sales, which was good, but, it was, again, I had no passion for it, right? You worked your 9-to-5, you got your commission check, you went home. And the company that I went to work for that I really enjoyed was a little technology company, my first taste of technology sales. And it was software as a service before software as a service was even a name. And they got bought by a company called Intel, or ITT. And then that company got bought by MCI. Anybody remember MCI? Right? Well, MCI was like, "Hey, welcome on board. We really would love to have you sell long distance." And so instead of having this really interesting technology sale, I got shoved into selling long distance, and that was not really exciting. That was, that churn and burn. You make 175 calls a day, right? That was, you had to hit that number every day. So, by Monday afternoon, I was already ready for Friday. It was time to go home. So that was when I was like, okay, I've got to do something else. Gotta do something else. And so I was, in my still stupid youth, I thought, I could own a restaurant. That would be a really, really good idea. So that was my first foray into being, I guess, an entrepreneur. I was a restaurateur. Started a restaurant called the Coyote Cafe in Cary, North Carolina. And it was, reasonably successful as far as independent restaurants go. So I was, very fortunate in that. And then made the mistake of opening restaurant number 2 and thinking that, hey, I've got the formula, right? It's working. I can just stamp it out again, right? So I opened the second one, and you could not call that one a success. It lasted about a year, and I finally closed that one down. Went back, reverted back to the old restaurant, and then in the meantime, I found a little cash cow, and that is coin-operated laundromats. Highly recommended. If you can find the right area, man, those things are little cash cows. So I had 4, ultimately 4 coin-operated laundromats. They do take attention. It's not like you set it and forget it. It takes some time and attention. And I had one that was just killing it in Durham, North Carolina, and sold that one maybe 8 or so years ago. But it was a nice little cash cow. So a great little sideline business if you're looking for a business. But still, that was not really, I wouldn't call that entrepreneurship. But that set me up. That was like my first taste of ownership, and there was no going back, right? It was like, I can never work for the man again. I'm going to do my own thing and, find out, how to make it in this world. And sold the successful restaurant and had enough money that I had a little bit of a cushion, and opened the Help Wanted pages to try to figure out what is that next step. So it was purely luck, right? I opened it up, and this is back in the late 90s. Where it's like this is when you still had physical papers, right? You didn't do it on your iPad. This is physical papers, and you open it up, and there's 1 page of this and 1 page of this and 10 pages of technology jobs, Oracle DBAs, $100,000 a year, right? I mean, it was just, I was like, okay, maybe this technology stuff is the thing to be, right? So again, I didn't come out of college going, I'm going to start a software as a service company. All right, I came out of college going, where's my next beer and how do I pay for it? Then went back to NC State and actually got an education. So I highly recommend that. Value your education. And that was my first foray into technology. Met this crazy guy named Chris Evans in Raleigh, North Carolina. And he was really my first technology mentor. Brilliant guy, still a great friend of mine today. He's got another company called Tethys, and I'm invested in that company, and it's doing really well. So he was, the guy that showed me the value of scalability, software as a service, how to, go stamp something out successfully. And so that was my long-winded path on how I got to technology entrepreneurship.
No, awesome. And one thing I want to ask, you mentioned Chris as your mentor. What do you look for? And I'm sure at that point it kind of sounds like, hey, somebody's willing to mentor me, so I'm going to take it. Not to put words in your mouth, but what do you suggest to anybody out here who's looking for a mentor? What does that kind of entail?
So there's 2 kinds of mentors that I look for. And I still, today, I look for mentors. The first one is like the person that inspires you, right? And that was really the mentor that Chris Evans was for me. And I look back in my life, and I've had those mentors throughout my life. My first real mentor, other than my father, was my band teacher in high school. The guy expected a lot of me, more than I ever expected of myself. And so, I felt like that sort of mentorship. When you have somebody that believes in you more than you believe in yourself, right? If you can find that person, that is a great mentor, regardless of whether they have the right, skill set that you're looking for in terms of mentorship, but, somebody that can bring it out in you. So that's the first kind of mentor that I look for, somebody that really inspires you in some way or brings out something, sort of fills in some of the gaps that you're missing, because everybody's missing something, right? My wife will tell you I'm missing a lot. Then the second mentor I look for is that experience gap, right? So, I've got a lot of experience in digital media. I have very, very little experience in e-commerce. And my company is moving into e-commerce. So the first thing I do is, okay, who do I know that knows e-commerce, right? And I'm fortunate enough to know Scott Wingo. Anybody know Scott Wingo, the guy that founded Channel Advisor, right? So he and a couple other guys, a guy named Mike Jones, they're my e-commerce mentor. So really, two. You got to find somebody that really inspires you personally, and that's really important. I can't tell you how, but that would be the first person I would find is somebody that personally helps you, be a better person.
Excellent. So you're talking with Chris, he's your mentor, you sell off the restaurant and you decide to get into technology. A, how did you do that? Because you're a farm boy who's working at restaurants and doing laundromats. And B, what was the company that you first came up with that kind of broke into this space?
Yeah, so, one thing, the trap that a lot of people get into is I got the 2 dogs, the big house, and the 2 car payments, right? And that is a hard trap to get out of, right? It is, you got to have, somebody's got to pay the bills, right? And if you got a job that's paying you the cash to pay the bills, it's hard to step back from that and do something challenging. I'll get to the answer for your question in just a second. But when I decided I was going to open a restaurant, I jettisoned the job that was paying me at the time $60,000 a year, which back then was a lot of money. And I went to work waiting tables, right? So I went from $60,000 a year to $2.15 an hour, just so I could learn the restaurant business. And that's it's important to be able to take that leap, to provide yourself that cushion. I don't recommend going from $60,000 a year to $2.15 an hour. It may not have been the smartest thing I ever did, but you have to be able to. If you're leveraged so far with your current lifestyle, it's really hard to step out and do something different. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, you did, and I'll follow up to what you just said. What made you say, fuck it, I'm going to go make $2 an hour instead of $60K a year? Like, was that over time, or was it just one night you're like, this is what I have to do?
It was sort of the grind of every day coming in and hating my job, right? And that was the catalyst for me. It's like, I can't do this. Like, your job is such a big part of your life, right? Life is way too short to just go in every day and grind it out every day. So that was and one day it's sort of the straw that broke the back, and I was like, I am out of here, and was like, okay, I'm going to open a restaurant. I don't know anything about it. How am I going to go figure this out? And so I opened the help wanted pages again, and there's waiting tables jobs, waiter jobs, and I'm like, you know what? That's a great way to start. Some guy named Mike Zavotsin gave me my start in that business, and it was like, I'll take a chance on you. You have no experience, and that was how I got into the restaurant business. But same thing with on the technology side. I fortunately, with the sale of the restaurant, I had enough cash that I could go back and get a real technology degree, and having that cushion helps a lot, right? But again, I stepped back and I went to college and waited tables again. Vinny's, remember Vinny's?
Oh yeah, I used to go there all the time.
Yeah,
Matthews. Were you here in Charlotte?
No, Vinny's. Well, Vinny's was here in Charlotte too, but the original Vinny's was in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Okay.
And I remember my first night at Vinny's. I started right before Christmas. My first table tipped me $250. And I was like, I'm going to do that. Now, that was the biggest tip I ever got. Right? So again, I had some cash to fall back on, but I waited tables while I was going back to college to get the Master's of Science. So took a step back again, and that was where I met Chris. And he's like, hey, I got this crazy idea. Let's do dynamic content in websites. And I'm like, hey, this internet thing might be pretty big.
What year was this around?
This was 96.
Okay,
97.
so you were definitely before the .com boom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you were very early.
Yeah, this was, Chris was like, I'm not the guy that sees around the corner, right? Chris Evans is the guy that sees around the corner and around the next corner, and I'm just happy to ride on his coattails, so.
That's awesome. So tell us about the company that you and Chris kind of brainstormed and what you came up with.
So originally it was going to be a dynamic content system where, think about the Wall Street Journal Online. And if you're reading the Wall Street Journal Online in New York, you might be attuned to more liberal stories, right? And if you're reading the Wall Street Journal in Atlanta, Georgia, you might want different stories on the homepage when you go online. I do a tablet online. It was this way. So the idea was, let's go to the Wall Street Journal and give them the ability to dynamically decide what content to deliver based on where somebody was reading the newspaper. And that was a great idea, but everybody was like, this was 96, right? I mean,
it takes me 20 minutes just to load up that article. So,
right. Everybody's like, that's a great idea, but could you deliver an ad dynamically? Because right now, all we do is stick one ad on the front page, and it's there for everybody. And so that's how the idea of the online ad server got started. Was let's just dynamically deliver ads, and that's was our first foray. And our first customer was a company called Lycos.
Oh wow, they were huge. Yeah,
well, they were Google before Google even thought about being Google. And they also went straight down.
Didn't Yahoo acquire them?
Yahoo acquired some of the assets, but I ran into Lycos a few years ago doing something, same company, but doing something completely different. But they had bought some other, the actual name, corporation, and so it still exists, maybe. So
what about Ask Jeeves? No, we won't.
Ask Jeeves is a customer of ours as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so those were heydays. And then 2000 came, and it was not heydays.
But so what was the name of that company?
Accipiter.
Okay.
Right?
So you said 2000 came, and I think most people in the room kind of know what happened with that company.
Blew up.
But how'd you get through?
Yeah, so there's a lot of steps in between there, right? So we started that thing in 96, 97 and sold it to a company called CMGI in 1998 for like $34 million or something, which was huge back then, right? And big press on largest software transaction in North Carolina. And then the CMGI merged us with another company and then spun us out to go public. Renamed us, called us Engage. And so we went public in 1999.
Oh, hell.
We went out at about $34 a share. And we were burning cash. I think we were burning $500,000 a month. Right? And just, it was insane days. And so we went public, and the stock within a year went from $34 a share to $400 and something a share. I mean, it was just crazy day. And we felt like this was never going to end, right? Like we could just gobble up companies left and right, and in a year we managed to buy 13 companies, and didn't do a damn thing with them. We didn't integrate them. We just were like, hey, why don't you buy them? And of course, the reality slapped us hard in the face in 2000, March of 2000. Man, I can tell you, the world came to an end. We just saw everything sink, and all 13 acquisitions. At the end of the day, we were left with 2, And one was a digital asset management company that dealt with traditional newspapers. And the other was what was left of Accipiter. And so I went to the board of directors and was like, hey, I'll take our interactive division. Right? I'll buy that back from you. Because they said the future, this internet thing is screwed up. Right? So we want to focus on print. Right? So I'm like, awesome, you do that. I'll take this thing off your hands. So round two,
did you blow everything up? Sorry.
So we renamed it back to Accipiter.
Yeah.
We had gone from like 2,000 employees, and I came back out with 16. So you want to talk about laying people off? I've laid more people off than I can shake a stick at. And it never gets easier. But 16 people, and all these people were so thankful just to have a job, right? And you want to talk about a loyal group of employees. These people were like, hey, let's go make this thing work. So it was, I can take credit for getting the $250,000 gain in acquisition, but the hard work was on all the other folks. They killed it. And so 4 years later, we were wildly successful. So we took something that was like in the ash heap and turned it into something.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So 4 years later, that's 2006, and I think that's probably about the time where you started getting some acquisition offers, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Correct?
We were sort of debating. Do we go? You got to decide when is it time to raise money, right? And there's sort of, I look at a few inflection points on when to make that raise, and we had hit that inflection point where we just could not work hard enough to incorporate the business that we were getting, right? And we didn't have enough biz dev people to go out there and rock the market, right? And we just didn't have the capital. And the problem with that business, and a lot of software as a service businesses, is the cash trail. Right, you get a deal, right? It's this license fee, but it's 30 days after you deliver service. So maybe it takes you 90 days to implement the technology. Well, then they start using your product, transacting. Well, then you send them an invoice at the end of 30 days, and it's net 30. And a lot of these agency guys, their whole business model is around how slow they can pay. So so now you're at least 30 days out. Well, then now you're 60 days out because the invoice isn't due for another 30 days. Well, then they're slow paying you. So now it's 90 days out, maybe 120 days out. You got cash flow problems, right? And if you can close more business, and I'm way off subject here.
No, this is what I like about it. It's real conversation.
If you can close more business by generating money, by raising money, that's when it's time to raise money, right? That's a true inflection point. And so we hit that where I just couldn't, I needed more money to go hire salespeople. And so we started looking for funding. And that's when we started looking at strategic investors. And, one of probably the number one strategic investor for us, because there was one big company in the market that had a gaping hole, and man, we filled it, right? And so they were number one with a bullet for me to try to get funding from. And so we, went out there and said, hey, we're trying to raise a bunch of money, and they had a venture arm at the time. And they came back, a month or two later and said, you know what, we don't want to invest, which, crushed me, right? I was like, are you kidding me, right? We're perfect for you guys. And they're like, no, hold on, but we'd like to buy you, right? And so that's, when it starts being music to your ears. But their first offer was harrowing. I mean, I was so angry, I hung up the phone on this guy. It was so terrible.
They wanted you to pay them $250,000?
Well, not
Brian, write us a check and we'll take your company off your hands.
Yeah, almost. So I went back and started, fundraising again, and got an offer from DoubleClick again, who all they wanted to do again was shut the technology down, fire all the employees, and get a competitor out of the market. But they were willing to pay us a lot more money than Aquantive was. And so then I went back to Aquantive and said, hey, this is your last shot. right? Like I'd much rather deal with you guys because you're going to keep the business as a whole. But here's where you got to be, and that's how the deal came about. So, and it happened. It was, I remember they're West Coast, and these guys were all former Navy SEALs, right? So they're like disciplined beyond anything. And it was, I think we closed this deal. It was like 2:00 in the morning my time on like a Tuesday evening. And so I'm dead tired. Nobody knows this but me, right? The board doesn't know it. Nobody knows it. And I will never forget this. I woke up, of course, 5:00 in the morning. You're just anxious to go tell everybody and still everybody to sleep. But I get in the car and I, flip on the radio, do a classic rock station, and the first 3 songs that come on, one was AC/DC, Shoot to Thrill. The second one was... the group is escaping me, but Now You're Messing with the Son of a Bitch. Damn it. Anyway, and then the third one was George Thorogood, Bad to the Bone. And I was like, yes, I am bad to the bone. And everybody knows it.
How many times?
And of course, nobody knew it but me at that point.
How many times do you have to call up to request those 3 songs at 5 a.m.?
Yeah, I was like, it was meant to happen.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome. All right, so let me back up a little bit, then we'll jump back to where we are now. So from 2002, the time that you reacquired your own company, essentially, until 2006, you didn't have to take in any funding?
We did, yeah. Frontier Capital here locally. We started with $500,000 of Engage's money in the bank. So, that was the starting money for us, which we used it like it was gold, right? We barely spent any money, and, got the business launched. And I thought for 2 years, we're not going to make it, not going to make it, not going to make it. 2 years, where I was just convinced we weren't going to be able to pull the nose of the plane back up. And because this was, you think about 2002, the internet economy was still just terrible. And we had customers almost every quarter call up and say, we're out of business. Or we wouldn't even get a call. They would just, disappear. Lycos.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't until about 2 years in that we landed a really big customer. And I was like, okay, we're going to make it. Did not hear George Thorogood on the radio that morning. But it was, that's a great feeling when you're like, okay, I think we actually might make this thing.
Yeah. So what got you through even those 2 years where you're not landing a major client saying, fuck, maybe I should go make $2.15 an hour, or whatever the case is. I could go back to corporate America, get a nice cush job, work 9 to 5, and...
Oh, that was not an alternative. No.
No, I know, but I mean, there's a lot of people, I think, in this room or watching online that are probably thinking that. Like, how do you get through that, and how do you know if it's, kind of the right decision to make?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, for me, there was really no choice, right? Like, I was not going back to corporate. The worst fear for me was, using the backstop of going back to corporate. So it was, I'm either going to make this thing work, or we're going to drive it straight into the ground, and I will crawl under the desk and, weep for a few days, and then figure out what I'll do with the rest of my life. And you got to have those moments. That is the toughest part of being an entrepreneur, right? Everybody thinks, like, I was an overnight success, right? It just took me 8 years to do it. There's 2 years of that 8 years, it was like you go in every day thinking, I'm not going to make it, right? It's just gut-wrenching. And so there's not everybody is cut out for, you have to be able to compartmentalize the bad stuff. And there's plenty of it as an entrepreneur, right? Because you own it all, right? You can't go to your boss and say, hey, this really sucks, right? Because you are the boss, and everybody's coming to you going, this really sucks. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. I'm going to touch on that further. But first I want to ask you, we'll fast forward to where we just were on the last question. 2006, you get an acquisition offer. That was from Atlas, correct?
Quantum, yeah.
Okay. So they reach out to you, they make you your offer, it's 5 a.m., you're jamming out to some badass songs. 9 months later, though, I'm going to fast forward. If there's anything you want to do to fill the gaps,
that was great times.
It's public knowledge. So the company was acquired by Microsoft for $6.1 billion.
And we were a big piece of that.
Yep. Did you know, did they discuss that with you? Did you know it was going to be flipped that quick?
I'm going to tell you, if I had known that, I would have asked for all stock. I would have said all stock. But, as an entrepreneur, you want all cash, right? So you're fighting as hard as you can to get all cash. No, at the beginning, I did not know. But, day one, when we became a Quantive, immediately they were like, hey, we got this partner that we want you to talk to, and they've got some questions about your technology. And it was Microsoft guys. And so I'm like, hey, yeah, we got this great technology, and Microsoft's ad serving technology sucked, right? It was terrible. Even the Microsoft guys would tell you it was terrible, and it's so terrible that they're completely out of that business. They've given it all to AOL, and they've farmed it all out to a bunch of people. But that's a whole nother story. Microsoft, what a 3 years of professional misery. But
so assuming
Craig Chandler knows.
You still work for them, right? So Sebastian, why don't you point the camera at him right now?
Craig was one of the many layoffs. So damn, it was a good time. Yeah, Microsoft was not a good time, but it was a good time.
So the acquisition was bullshit. You didn't know, reading between the lines, that
they had a gap they wanted to fill, and I should have asked for like 3 times the money that I got paid.
Yeah.
But the great news was I got paid again. Right? They got paid 170% premium for the stock, and I got paid again. So it was so it was great. Right?
Yeah.
But, so they instead of asking me questions about what the technology does, they started asking questions about, well, how many customers do you have, and how how much revenue do you have? And I'm like, whoa, what does this have to do with you guys using the product? And so it was pretty evident to me quickly that they were looking at Quantive as an acquisition. And man, it was like they announced it we got bought in November, I think. And then 2006, and then they announced it. Internally, they had the executive team that they announced it to in maybe February. It was then announced officially in May, and then the transaction happened in August. So it was just bam, 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 and next thing you know, we had gone. The funny thing was, we had bought this little company in Vancouver, British Columbia, that had 8 people, and this would have been September of 2006. So they went from 8 people, we had 65. So we're at about 75 people. Well, then we get bought by Quantive, which had like 1,700 people just a month later, 2 months later. Well, then 4 months later, we get bought by Microsoft, 96,000 people. So this little company went from 8 people to 96,000 people in less than a year. It was insane. Always. I would ask for more money. I try not to look back too much.
Yeah.
It's you can kill yourself looking back at all the regrets and the things you should have or could have done. You need to learn from your mistakes, right? And don't make them. Try not to make them over. I make lots of mistakes. Most of them are just new mistakes. So
they're not mistakes; they're learning experiences.
Yeah. I've learned a lot. And I'm still learning. Like Kelly was a part of a company where it was a big learning experience for us. That was a big flop. So let's jump into that, because I think that's the biggest takeaway from everything is what you learn and how you can learn from it. So you get acquired by Microsoft, or I guess they acquire it from Atlas or whoever. Yep. Regardless, what do you jump into after that, after the acquisition? Did you take a break? Did you go make it rain for a few months, or did you just jump right back in? Yeah,
because I can see you making it rain.
So I really thought Microsoft, I was going to make it a go at Microsoft. The Quantive folks, I love those people. And if we were still part of a Quantive, I would still probably be there, because they were just Brian McAndrews and and Scott Howe and all those guys were just good, solid, respectable business guys. And so that part of that, the whole acquisition I loved. Microsoft, the first 18 months, they kind of left us alone, so it was great. I had the Microsoft business card, and we went from $35 million to $85 million in revenue, in a year. So we were on fire. And then, of course, Microsoft said, "Hey, guess what? We don't want to do this anymore." And now you can tell all your customers that you just landed that we're not going to be servicing them anymore. And I remember Weather.com. We had just signed those guys, and Joe Five Ash called the guy up. He just signed the contract, and he didn't want to do it. He sort of felt forced to do it. I called him up, and I'm like, "Hey, Joe, bad news. Microsoft's getting out of the business, so we're just going to tear the contract up." And he goes, "I knew this was going to fucking happen," and he slams the phone down. And so those days sucked at Microsoft because Microsoft really had an opportunity to rule digital media. They had, if they had gotten the Yahoo partnership, they could have owned display on digital. Could have owned it, right? And they just flushed it down the toilet. But that's just my opinion. So to answer your question, what did I do after Microsoft? I took 6 weeks off. And puttered around the house, tried to chase a little white ball around the golf course, did a bunch of projects around the house, until my wife was like, "You need to get a job. You were driving me crazy." And I was going crazy, right? So I thought, hey, retirement, awesome, right? And 6 weeks in, I was like, this sucks. Like, I got to do something.
That's what it should say right there. I forgot I'm wearing those.
Yes, exactly.
Fuck this shit. There's the socks up there right now that I forgot about.
And so then I thought, hey, my thing is going to be about helping entrepreneurs in the community. And I'm going to, everybody know the CED, Council for Entrepreneurial Development. It's headquartered out of Raleigh, but it's supposed to be North Carolina based. It's mostly Raleigh based.
Yeah.
They were supposed to help entrepreneurs, but at the time they had just gotten a new president, and they were a service organization. They serviced the lawyers and the accountants and the people who were paying the bills, and not really entrepreneurs. So I went to the president, Joan Seifert Rose, and said, "Hey, the CED needs to change, right? You guys are not doing anything for entrepreneurs. You need to change." And she said, "So you got to be careful what you ask for," because she was like, "That's great. What are you going to do about it?" Right? And so, long story short, I went up and studied a program called the Venture Mentoring Service at MIT. And they've got a great mentoring program for alumni and students and faculty. And so studied that and then helped launch Venture Mentoring Service for the CED in Raleigh, and which is still a great program, still going. I don't have anything to do with it anymore. But I thought that was going to be my calling. Helped with Joystick Labs, which was a gaming incubator, and Launchbox Digital, which was an incubator, and thought my thing was going to be all about helping entrepreneurs and helping them, understand how to start a business and run a business and take it to the next level, and enjoyed it. And then got sucked into a new business. It's hard to watch other people do it, right? And you get the hook set, and the next thing you know, I'm running another company. And damn it, there are times when I look back. You talk about looking back and going, should I have done that? There are times when I look back and I'm like, damn, why did I do that?
So that company you're talking about, so I'll kind of fast forward a little because we'll do Q&A in
Sure.
10, 15 minutes, so I don't want to, they can ask what they want. So you're with Frontier Capital, right?
Yeah, Frontier was my first venture funder, right? And they here in Charlotte, great group of guys. At the time, they were funded small opportunities. They gave me my first $2 million funding. Best thing I ever did was take VC money. Best thing I ever did. We went from having a revenue trajectory that looked like this to having not quite a hockey stick. And software as a service is hard to make a hockey stick. But it really was an inflection point for us because I was able to hire all the people I needed to. So yes, I went. So Frontier Capital. Up until recently, we were one of the best returns they had on any investment. And somebody beat me a year ago or so, which really pisses me off. But
makes you work harder for
that's right.
this year.
That's right. And so they asked me to become an operating partner, which means nothing, right? I get paid nothing. All I do is I get my logo, my little face on their website that says I'm an operating partner, and occasionally they will call me and they will say, hey, we're looking at this company like Simplify, which is an Austin-based company. They said, hey, we're looking at this company to make an investment. Will you go take a look at it? And so I'll take a look. And that's how I got involved with Step Leader. Was through those damn Frontier guys. Step Leader, they actually said, hey, we're looking at this company in Atlanta called LSN Mobile. Anybody?
No, I was seeing it. That's my Atlanta connection.
Okay. We're going to invest. We're looking at LSN Mobile, and I went down and looked at LSN Mobile, and I was like, do not invest in LSN Mobile, man. These guys have no technology. They're great sales guys, but their technology's like ancient. Do not invest in those guys. And in the meantime, they saw this other company that was a competitor called News Over Wireless. And that was a part of Capital Broadcasting, and which is a big broadcast company out of Raleigh, North Carolina. And they said, well, go look at News Over Wireless. So I looked at News Over Wireless, and News Over Wireless had great technology, no sales, right? Their sales were non-existent. So I was like, man, that is a marriage made in heaven, man. You slap those two companies together, you got great technology, great sales, rocket ship, right? And so then the idea was I'm going to work the merger, get the two companies together, and I was going to sit on the board. And at the end, the very end, we had the documents in front of them. They were getting ready to sign, and News Over Wireless took a big customer from LSN. And egos got in the way, and they got pissed off at each other, and the deal blew up. So in the meantime, the Capital Broadcasting guys were like, hey, we'd like you to find a CEO for us. We want to spin this company out. And so I worked trying to find a CEO to run this company. And long story short, I was sucked into becoming the CEO and spinning the company out. And we were on a rocket ship for about 18 months, man. It was crazy. We turned on the sales. Kelly was part of that. And we wrote it. But then the industry, the one mistake that I made was this was relying on a single industry, the television broadcast space, right? And that was a huge mistake. It turned out to be huge. Like I didn't have the foresight to understand, that it could be. But something fundamentally changed in the local TV broadcast space. I'd be happy to tell you about it if you really want to know. But that industry evaporated in terms of being a potential customer. LSN went out of business. We essentially went out of business. We sold our piece, what was left of it, to a company called DoApp, which they were kind of limped along, and they sold themselves to another company called News Cycle, and so it ended up being a terrible business to be in. But it did give me the knowledge to launch Reveal, and which is so I can be thankful for that. But
yeah, and no, Reveal's kind of what I wanted to get to. Before I do, Frontier Capital, I know that there's quite a few people in here who have startup ideas, startup businesses, looking for investing. Maybe a few pieces of advice, what you look for when making an investment, or what other VCs or angel investors do.
Yep.
When's the right time to look for an investment? I know that you mentioned getting a VC, a strategic, really almost helped with that, or close to the hockey stick growth. So
yep.
What should you look for, and what are you looking for on the investor side?
Well, from my perspective, I do a fair amount of angel investing. And what I look for is you have a passion for your business is number one, right? You got to believe in what you're doing. And then for me personally, I have to understand it, right? You have to be able to articulate your business. And if it takes you, a 30-minute elevator pitch to make me understand what you do, that's a big problem, right? And what the value proposition is. You got to be able to, quickly articulate, what that business is, and then what the opportunity is, right? Like there's plenty of really good ideas that don't have any, hey, it's a great lifestyle business. You might get to $1 million a year, or $2 million, or maybe even 10, but you're never going to get to $100 million on that business idea. So for me, it's got to be a good, solid idea that you can articulate, and there has to be some path towards scalability, right? It can't be George's garage shop. And I'll tell you one that I'm wrong a lot. Scott Wingo, my e-commerce advisor, do you know what he's doing now? Right? And I laughed when I heard this. He has a company called Spiffy. And Spiffy does on-demand car wash.
Yeah, they're huge.
And I'm like, what is this guy, e-commerce guy, doing what he's doing now? Hey, Scott, come wash my car for me. You better not be watching this. But man, he's killing it, right? He's the whole on-demand economy, right? Like, what is up with the millennials that want everything delivered to their doorstep?
We're fucking lazy, man. Don't beat around the bush.
So anyway, I'm wrong, right? Like, I thought that business could never be scalable, but it clearly is turning out to be scalable. He's hitting revenue numbers that I would like to be hitting right now. So, and Rover.com. Anybody know Rover.com?
Them, yeah.
Aaron Easterly, man, I laughed my ass off when he launched Rover.com. I was like, what? A dog sitting service? Are you kidding me? And he's been like Entrepreneur of the Year and all kinds of stuff. He's doing really well. So I'm wrong a lot. And the one thing from the other side of the table is you're going to hear no a lot, right? Like my first investment from Frontier, they were like my 70th meeting with a venture capital group. 70. And I probably talked to 10 more after those guys. So you got to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince. Just because you hear no, and I still hear no a lot, you're going to hear it. So get used to it. Toughen up.
Even with your resume, you're hearing no. So anybody's going to hear no from that. So
yep, I heard no today. So
if you're not passionate about it, I think in a nutshell, if you're not passionate about your business and you're not willing to put in all the blood, sweat, and tears, it's not worth your time.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep. It's hard to be successful part-time. Right?
Yes. So you mentioned Reveal Mobile. Why don't you tell us what that is? Just kind of do the elevator pitch so people can't hear the bad ones. The elevator pitch and what you're kind of doing with that, how you spun up that idea.
Yeah, so, my background is in internet technology, particularly on the ad tech side of that. So, obviously that's where my brain functions the best. So it was a natural leap for me. But it's, to get to the elevator pitch, we collect mobile data in apps, specifically media apps. So we work with some of the largest media companies, weather.com, etc. We have a tiny piece of code that goes in those apps, and we collect data from the usage of those apps. So every time somebody opens like the weather.com app, it passes the latitude and longitude to that user. We just capture that latitude and longitude and then record that over history, right? So we know you're a business traveler because we see you at airports 3 or 4 times a month. All right, we know you're the grocery shopper in the family because we see you at Harris Wholesale or Harris Teeter 3 or 4 times a week. So, but the unique thing that we do is with beacons. Everybody know what beacons are? Bluetooth beacons? Anybody want a 101 on beacons? Okay. So, and this was sort of the aha moment for me was when we started experimenting with beacons. Capital Broadcasting is a phenomenal partner for us. They were our alpha partner. I had this idea, and I said, will you test this out? And they put this technology in their apps. And essentially, the CEO of the company went to the product guys were like, hell no, I'm not putting that in my app, right? And the CEO was like, oh yeah. you're putting that in your app. And so we managed to cajole our way into getting their app. And we just turned on beacon recognition as a part of what we do. And the beacons are these little tiny devices, and I brought some, but... Do you? Well, you can show and tell on some beacons.
Let's do it. No, right now. You're on the spot.
They're all kinds of companies are putting in beacons, and they emit a Bluetooth signal. Right? And a typical beacon just sends out its ID over and over and over and over again. This is Chris, by the way. And he is big into Frisbee golf. Disc golf!
You need the correct term. That's like calling in UK, calling it soccer instead of football. Right. You can't do that.
This is a naked beacon because it doesn't have the nice, cool covering on it that most of the beacons that you'll see out in the wild. Anybody ever heard of Steels? Steels? No? They're a Raleigh company doing really great things with beacons. But anyway, yes, Tobu, Chris, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana White.
So those little things are beacons, and I'll give you a great example of somebody that uses a beacon. Target, right? They have beacons in all their stores, and if you have the Target Cartwheel app, and you walk into Target, you'll get a push alert that says, hey, welcome to Target. Would you like to see the deals of the day? And you can either dismiss it or you can see what the deals of the day are, right? So another great use of a beacon is all the airport authorities have beacons. So if you have the Virgin Atlantic app on your phone, you walk into an airport that has Virgin Atlantic terminals, and your boarding pass will immediately go to your home screen, and that's all beacon-based, right? So it's all about proximity. Right? Yep. You bump into a beacon with an app that recognizes that beacon, and something magic happens. Right? So great technology. That's not what we do with beacons. What we did is we turned on beacon recognition in the Capital Broadcast of the WREL app, and just in the first week, in just Raleigh, we bumped into 7,000 beacons in 1 week. And I would have been happy if we'd bumped into a dozen. And I was like, what the heck, right? What are all these, there's 7,000 beacons out in Raleigh already. This was a couple years ago. And so I was like, all right, there's something here. And the evil genius in me was, like, what can I do with this data? And the great thing, the standard for mobile apps in terms of any sort of audience data is just latitude and longitude, right? You open the app up and it passes kind of where you are, and you can make decisions on what to do with that app based on that sort of very inaccurate latitude and longitude. Well, the beacons, right, you have to be within just a few meters of that beacon for it to register, for your phone to pick it up. So it's very precise. So the key is being able to then zero in on where that beacon actually is. And once you've got that, that is very precise data. So the latitude and longitude will tell me that somebody's in a shopping center. But the beacons tell me, oh, you went to Panera Bread, and you went to Starbucks, and you went to the Verizon store. Right? So very, very granular data. And that's what, our customers, they're trying to have a much more engaging experience with their mobile apps. And so the more granular they can get on that data, the more value there is. And so that's what we do, is we collect that data, all anonymously, so I can't identify any of you personally. Maybe Kelly, because her habits are way off the chart. But we then make that data usable to our app partners, right, in the form of audience segments, business travelers, golfers, grocery shoppers, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how we make money with that data. So I'm now a data platform.
So with beacon technology, have you seen any trends with it lately? And follow up to that, what do you think the future holds?
Very much in the crawling stage. It's barely. It's still in diapers.
Yeah.
Everything, not everything, but a lot of industries when they start out, there's this big peak, right, where you get the thought leaders that want to jump out on some sort of idea. And you definitely saw that in beacons. You saw Macy's and Target and a bunch of people adopt beacons. And that was a couple years ago, and there was a big flurry of activity. And then it kind of went into the doldrums where, everybody else was kind of like, is this going to work, right? Will consumers accept this? I'm going to wait and see what happens. And, we're past that now, fortunately. Now you're starting to see big implementations. A couple of years ago, a big implementation was like 4,000 beacons. Now you're seeing even fairly small companies. TouchTunes, the TouchTunes guys, Steve? Those guys trying to put in like 40,000 beacons. My friends at Digital to Go, how many beacons you guys got out there in the wild? Yep. So, and Steve is probably a bigger expert in beacons. Steve works with Digital to Go and is a big beacon expert, a big partner of ours as well. So big plug for Steve. Thanks. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, as far as the beacons, how far in a range do they have to be? You said 7,500, or even at a target, do they need to be put every 10 feet, 10 yards, 100 feet? How does
it depends on what you're trying to capture.
Okay.
Right? So, like, if you think about a car dealership, and you want to capture somebody that's on the lot, right? You want that beacon to transmit as far as you can, right? So you might have 3 beacons in the lot that are transmitting as far as they'll transmit, which is maybe 90 feet. Right? Okay. Then let's say you want to capture somebody that's gone into the dealership itself, right? Then you want to set the beacon so it'll do, maybe 15 meters, right? Because you don't want to capture the people in the lot. You want to know that they actually came into the dealership. Well, then you want to know that somebody bought a car, right? So where do they go when they're buying the car, right? They go to the finance office, right? So you put a beacon in the finance office. Man, anybody that makes it from the lot to the end of the dealership into the finance office, they either know the finance guy and are having a cup of coffee, or they just bought a car. Because you don't go into the finance office unless you're buying a car, right? Yeah. And so those beacons you want narrow. You want them down to like 4 meters or so that you're not capturing people that are just kind of walking by. So it varies. You can set it wide or narrow.
So the more you have, the smarter advertising decisions you can make, and that's a problem that Reveal Mobile is solving.
Yep. So example in Raleigh, the Durham Bulls, they've got 52 beacons in the Durham Bulls Stadium. Right, so it sounds like a lot of beacons, right? 52 beacons, but they want one at every entrance. They want one at all. Like you go up and get a beer, they want to know how long is that beer line. They also want to know the people who are setting in the third section versus the infield first section. And there are a lot of arenas now that are even saying they'll know, hey, we've got a lot of empty seats on the first level. Let's send a push notification to all the people in the third level and try to get them to buy, hey, pay $50 and you can get seats down on the first level, right? So a lot of different applications of beacons, so there's a lot of opportunity to get very granular. You go into Target, and I don't know how many beacons the Targets have, but they certainly have one in the pharmacy, and they have one in all the major departments. So they can know, hey, you're shoe shopping, or you're shopping for home goods, or whatever.
So just to clarify, they only know that if you have the app, though. Correct?
That's right. You have to have an app that works that recognizes those beacons.
Okay. So you get a phone call tomorrow, and somebody says they want to buy your company. What are you going to do different this time than you did last time?
Ask for more money. No. What would I do different?
I mean, would you ask hey, are you planning on selling the company shortly, or?
I don't know. Maybe. It depends on who it is.
Yeah.
Right? But, I'd like to think I'm smarter about the transaction now, but, we did a fair job with Aquanative. So
I think fair is an understatement. But.
Yeah, we did all right. So I don't know what I would do different. It's every transaction is different. Stock versus cash, and it depends on, is this a private company and you have to get cash, and I really like selling to public companies. A lot more options selling to public companies. It doesn't always work that way, but much easier transaction with selling to public companies as well. But one of the things that I've been reasonably successful at is picking a company that has like a Quantum, right? They were number one with a bullet for me. We filled a gap that they clearly had, and so we worked really hard to fill that gap technically, so that we were a very logical buyer for them, right? So I don't, that shouldn't be 100% of your product efforts, right? But if your goal is to sell your company versus go IPO, you need to have an understanding of who's going to buy it and what they're going to buy it for, right? And if you have an understanding of what they're going to buy it for, you need to have that as part of your product strategy, right? Not the only thing, right? At some point, the customer, someone has to pay for it. Right? You have to get paying customers.
Yeah.
Unless you're WhatsApp. Right.
Yeah, that sold for $19 billion for not having one customer, or I guess you could put Instagram in that.
Yeah.
So look at Mr. Brokaw ignoring you right here. So last thing I have, what's next steps for Reveal Mobile? What are you looking for? What are you trying to accomplish at this point in time?
Well, next step, we're getting ready to close around the funding. Love that funding. And
what round?
It's the A round. We've had our C, we're in the A round. And man, I thought I could come here and tell you it's closed, but it's not quite.
Well, it will be. Well, hang on. I don't mean to interrupt, but Mary Ellen, I'm sure that she loves everything that you're saying. I think she's sneaking out because she is the head of Google Fiber. So all the shit that you're talking for Charlotte about, all the shit that you're talking about Microsoft, I saw her doing some of this. If you have Google Fiber problems, she's leaving now, so you need to go chase her outside of the parking lot. That's your cue. No, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So, where was I? What next steps for Reveal? So we're closing funding, and we've gotten that. We launched in October of 2015, so we're not quite a year old. And we didn't start generating our first dollar of revenue until January of this year, right? And it was, we started to trickle in, and now we're just starting to get, we've got a 600% increase in revenue. But when you start from zero, that's, it doesn't take a whole lot to get 600%. But that's a great trend, and so you raise money on the trends, right? The mistake that I see a lot of people make is they see that trend going up and they're like, hey, I don't need any funding, right? Because, man, everything is awesome, right? I'm killing it. Well, and that's great, right, that you're killing it. And but if things change and you start to flatten out and suddenly you're struggling for cash, it is much harder to get money when the trends are not in your direction, right? So, when things are going great for you, that's when you need to raise money. When things are not going great for you, you can try to raise money, but it is really, really tough.
The investors will see through that, I would imagine.
Yes. Now, man, I tell you what, there are some masters that I've seen that I will not name because I love them, even though they're masters of. They will take a metric, regardless of how irrelevant that metric is, and they will convince the investors that it is the most important metric and they should only focus on that metric. That is not a skill set that I have, but I've seen a couple guys in the industry that absolutely, I'm like, how did those guys raise money? And anyway, so it can happen if you can sell it the right way.
If you spend time on AngelList, you'll have that question quite a few times. How did these guys raise money and these didn't? So always interesting.
Raising money is all about salesmanship, right? You want to talk about it. I mean, it is the hardest sales job you will ever have is trying to raise money.
Well, cool. I have about 400 more questions for you, but I'm just going to go ahead and jump straight to the audience if that's good with you, because what they want to know is more important than what I'm reading off my cell phone. So
awesome.
Yeah, let's open it up. Go ahead.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Oh, you're loud.
Oh, good.
My name's Matt. I'm a SEO analyst for Red Ventures here in Charlotte. So you said it took you 69 notes to get your 70th yes, right?
Yep.
what motivation did you use to basically get your mindset through all those no's when you're probably walking into all these meetings thinking to yourself, my idea is the best, my idea is the best, but you get these no's. What was that motivation factor that you had?
So for me, like I've always been competitive, right? And you have to be convinced that you are right? But there's a reason why you're getting a no. And so the thing you have to take out of those no's is why, right? Was it not? Because some of them are legitimate, right? They're like, hey, we don't invest in ad tech, right? Or we don't invest in companies in this, size range or whatever, right? So there's some legitimate no's. Every VC, they hear hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pitches every year, right? So what are they looking for? They're not looking for the yes. They're looking for the one reason to say no, right? And once they have that reason, then you're done, right? So all those no's need to be learned, or as many as you can, need to be learning experiences. And try to take away from that. What did why did they? What message wasn't I delivering? And that's the motivation that I use out of it. You have to use everyone as a learning experience. Some of them are, worthless. I had some guy in Boston that was like, I was trying to raise money, and he was, this was for Accipiter, right? We were an ad server, and he's like, it's all about the eyeballs. And I'm like, yeah, I know, it's all about the eyeballs. The more eyeballs you have looking at this stuff, the more money you make, right? It's awesome. He's like, no, I'm telling you, this was, early 2000s, right? He's like, no, it's the eyeballs. And I'm like, I get it, it's the eyeballs, right? And he's like, no, you got to show that people are looking at the ads. And I'm like,
blessing in the sky, he said.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, I'm like, they've got the webpage up. He goes, no, you need to have some eye tracking software. I'm like,
well, you took Cheech and Chong, it sounds
I'm telling
like,
you. Yeah, so I learned nothing from that guy, other than having a good chuckle later. But, yeah, I hope he's not raising money for VC, but anyway. So there's something you're not going to learn. But, I try to use every one of them as a learning experience. So.
I have a question for you. You talk a lot about what's happening in the businesses that you help to acquire and sold. But you didn't talk too much about your family. Like, immediately in your family life, what was that like while you're going through this journey up and down? How do you balance your family life as well? Miserably.
I'll tell you, I started my first business when my first child, was 5 months old, right? And you want to talk about one pissed off mom. Because, but there's no good time, right? There's no good time. I'm fortunately blessed with a wife that gets it, right? That she's very understanding. She was a great, executive wife, and got it, right? And I also had the fortune of, providing a situation where she didn't have to work, right? Where her job was, taking care of the kids and the family. And so she took her job very seriously and let me do my job, right? Much to the family's detriment, because there were years where, in the early times, where my family was a stranger to me because I was committed, man, and it wasn't to the family. It was commitment to getting that, plane up off the ground. And, so you want to talk about regrets, right? Like that's, that's one of my regrets. Like I love my family, my kid. We should have a great relationship, all still together. But that's tough. I'm not the person to look to for advice there. Yeah, you got. And I'm telling you, I had a young man that came to me, and he had an idea and wanted to do something, and but he was working maybe 9 to 5, right, on his idea. And I'm like, dude, your competition is going to run you over, right? You need to be thinking about this 24/7. He's like, yeah, my wife is just killing me. She's, she won't, if I leave early or if I come, and I'm like, hey, if you can't get support from home, it is really, really hard to make a successful business, right? So that's a partnership, right? And if you don't get it from home, it's the support that you need, then it's really tough to be successful.
It might not be the right industry for you.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. You had your hand.
Next, uh,
Thank you. Is there an evaluating a company for to be inspired by? So you're looking at a central position for your company. What are the key things that you're looking for in that other company? Either good or bad. What are the good warning signs that you should be watching out for, or what are the things that you should be looking for to make sure that marriage is going to be out here?
Yeah, for me, like we had opportunities that were really bad and really good, right? And fortunately, they were really obvious, right? DoubleClick was really bad because it was really good from a check perspective, right? It was really good for me and the founders, and the investors, but horrible for everybody else, right? Because the technology was gone, customers were going to have to. It was just terrible, right? That's really easy to say that if you've got an alternative, take it, right? A good alternative. A lot of times you don't have that alternative, right? So for me, I look for, is there a good corporate culture fit? Because I've seen a lot of mergers where, man, it is just companies going at each other from a corporate culture. And that's, it's easy to say, hard to really do. And then, the other is a true product fit, right? Like I was involved in all kinds of acquisitions where we were acquiring companies to get revenue growth, right? That was a lousy reason. It's just hard to make a company work and be successul if your growth is all coming from acquisition and very little from organic.
Yeah, we got time for a few more.
Yeah.
I think you were next, David.
Yeah. You mentioned two important mentors in your life. Chris Evans, which was your technology mentor, and Scott Lingo, which is your e-commerce mentor. What strategy or technique would you share to get those mentors to invest in you, to help you? You have to build a relationship first as a friend?
Yeah, it's really hard to just go to somebody and go, hey, will you be my mentor, right? Although I've had plenty of people do that. Like they've come up and said, hey, I got this startup and it's kind of in your space. Would you mind advising me, right? And so, I'm not saying don't do that, because if you see somebody out there that you think can really help you, man, you've got to ask, right? You've got to ask, but give them a reason why, right? Like, hey, I really respect what you've done. I really think you can help me, and here's what I'm willing to do in return, right? I'll wash your car every day, right? Usually, equity is the way I solve that problem. So don't be afraid to ask, but typically the mentors that I've found, I've had some relationship with, somewhere else, right? So the networking, right? If you're not networking today, the fact that you're here means you're networking. But that's like a good 25% of my job is networking, and building up those relationships. And then once you've got relationships, and the relationships have to be two ways, right? Like you can't just take. There has to be some level of giving back. And that sometimes it's hard, right? Like what do I have to offer this person? But that's where you get the best relationships. So does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
So it sounds like having your pitch down too, just like you would to an investor, having your pitch down why they should mentor you or your company and join the board. So. Yep.
And you're gonna ask people, and they're gonna say, "I don't have time," right? And legitimately, like there are people I turn away now because I'm trying to run a company. So it's really hard for me to mentor people while I need my own mentoring. So you're gonna get no's just like you get everywhere else in life, but keep after it.
First of all, thank you. I know we all appreciate it. Whether it's your job at the restaurant, going back for more education, or your corporate job, in your perspective, where do you draw the line between gathering experience to be ready to have your own business or startup versus jumping ahead and learning it?
Yeah, today I feel like and this is probably a mistake on my part, I feel like I'm smart enough not to have to, get that extra. Like today, I wouldn't go back and wait tables to get the experience. But it's tough, right? Like if you know nothing about the business, it is really tough to get into something without some level of knowledge, right? And even what I'm doing today, with Reveal, everything that I've done historically has really built up my expertise in this industry. So, it's easy for me to just jump into it. Things I don't know about the data side, but so it's, that's a tough balance. Would I recommend, if I was doing this all over again, would I have waited tables before I bought a restaurant? Probably the smartest thing I did, right? Because if I had jumped into a restaurant without knowing, the restaurant business, that would have been really, really stupid. So it's hard enough as it is. It's, I don't know many industries that you can just jump into without some level of knowledge, right? Like I think about, I had a friend of mine that he bought a HVAC business, right? It was existing. They had 30 guys out there doing AC stuff. And it was a successful business. He didn't know squat about the AC business. He just said, there's always going to be a need for guys repairing AC units, right? So I'm going to do it. He knew something about running a business, and he's wildly successful, right? He took the experience that he knew about digital media and turned it into a very successful business. So it can absolutely be done, but you need to have some, expertise that you can bring and sort of get it to that next level. I think you were next.
So you mentioned company culture a few times when you were in the beginning not integrating the companies. But what were from today's perspective, what can you say about what works well and what works, like trying to explore and evaluate the company of your acquisitions beforehand, trying to identify if it's a fit, and then once they're in there, like how do you do that? And I need to also comment on taking over the steering wheel in that other company.
Yeah. That's a great question. And it's really hard. There are different styles of management, and I think corporate culture comes from the top down, right? You can look at a lot of examples of that. And, I'll use Aquaniv versus Microsoft. Aquaniv was, Craig, you were there, right?
I love the local group between
right. Phenomenal guys. They're hardworking, sincere. Their style of management was inclusion versus Microsoft with Ballmer. That dude was a bully. I mean, and the guys ranted and raved and screamed. And I was in meetings where he was yelling at people. And physically, you thought this guy was going to cause bodily harm to somebody, right? That's another management style, right? And how do you sort of flesh those things out? And there's probably Microsoft people here, and I apologize, but Craig's Microsoft. Sorry, buddy.
It's in a better place now.
Yeah, it is in a better place. I'm sure Satya is doing a much better job. But so to answer your question, at the end of the day, if Microsoft had come with just as big or a bigger check than Aquaniv and said, we're going to buy you before Aquaniv, would I have sold to Microsoft instead of Aquaniv, even though I like the Aquaniv guys better than Microsoft? You're damn right I would have. Right? Because that check softens a lot, right? My days at Microsoft were miserable. Not the last half of my experience at Microsoft was miserable because of the circumstances that we were in. But I would do it all over again, right? Like you show me the money, right? You write me the big enough check, and I'll tolerate anybody for a little bit of time.
So I'm assuming you don't have a PC.
I have a Mac.
Yeah,
and I bought a Chromebook for the first time. Got a Chromebook.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I think we have 3 more that we need to get. I think you were in the back, then you, and then Sharon here. So did you have a question, Tom?
Yeah, I was going to ask.
And we'll go in order.
You went back to school for that.
Yep.
What restaurant did you have a business plan then? And how did you finally finish? Did you already have an idea what you wanted to do?
No clue.
Did
No clue.
It's a big space.
You know, again, you know, I'm the big, you know, like, here's what I'm not going to do, right? Like, I was not going to be a farmer. I was not going to be in the restaurant business, right? And that's what I knew, right? So you have to know something first, right? And then, once you know what you're not going to do, then you got to figure out, hey, what could I do? And that was, for me, it's all about opportunity. I've been called an entrepreneur a lot, and I probably qualify, but I am much more of an opportunist than I am an entrepreneur. And it is all about recognizing the opportunity. And it was when I opened up those Help Wanted pages and saw like 10 pages of technology jobs, that was the light bulb that I was like, holy shit, that's a lot of jobs, and they're paying a lot of money, right? I need to be in that space. And so that was, it was no more glorious than that. So just, take some belief, and you got to find luck is recognizing opportunity, right? And, there's a lot of people that have been very lucky, but they worked really hard to get lucky.
Excellent. Yep.
So I work in software as a service sales right now, just like yourself, when you're starting out, and I'm making the transition to entrepreneurship. Just wondering, what are some of the aspects of working in software sales that have helped you in your path of entrepreneurship, and what are some of the hurdles?
So, the best thing that's, selling software as a service did for me was the sales discipline, right? Because if you are going to be successful at that kind of sale, you have to have the discipline to come in every day and knock it out, right? There's nothing glorious about that. It is like you go in, you do your 45 calls or do whatever that number is. It's all about backing into the number. Here's the I need to make $1 million in sales. How many customers does it take to get to that $1 million in sales? How many calls do I have to make to, lead to one sale? Well, it's pretty easy how you get to that number, right? So that, business is a similar thing, right? Here's what I want to accomplish, right? And you have to make some assumptions, right? To accomplish that, here's how many customers I need. Here's how much they're going to pay me. Here's how hard it's going to be to get it. You're always wrong. It's always going to take you like 3 times longer than you ever think it's gonna to make it happen. But I think that discipline that you get in software sales or any sort of sales where it's this very disciplined cadence every day helps you in business because you've got to be prepared for that. So I think it's a great stepping stone.
What about some of the ways that maybe having a sales mind, it handicaps you?
I find that the good salespeople are always the easiest ones to sell, right? Like they are the worst guys you want making a deal for your company because they believe everything. Yeah, man, we're going to make a lot of money. I know it costs $10,000 a month, but man, we're going to rock it with this. And so that's, you have to have sales, people who are really successful at sales typically are very, very optimistic, right? And, optimism is a great thing, but you have to have that pragmatist, that person that is like, okay, fun boy, right? Like, you think it's going to do this, but what if it doesn't, right? Somebody's got to sort of have that level of reality. And, you got to bring yourself out of the sales mode to do that sometimes.
Yeah. Last question, Sharon.
It's Sharon.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sharon. I'm sorry.
I wondered.
Who's he talking to?
3 of us in the room. Okay, so if you're in startup phase and you're lucky enough that the company that could provide infrastructure, help you launch and maintain your customers and service them, wants to partner with you for equity, do you still go after that venture capitalist money to get you started and sustain you?
It depends. Yeah. I would have to know the circumstances to, having a strategic partner, it depends on how much of your revenue comes from that strategic partner. Because that
startup is like, it's a projection. It's not, it's
yeah.
not real yet because you haven't accelerated anything yet.
Yeah, because if most of your revenue is coming through a partner, that is like an alarm bell for venture money, because you have a force outside of your control that it's like having a big sales concentration in one customer, right? What happens if that customer goes away? And that's a challenge. Now, it's something you can get around, but
they're not the company, but the service you provide is what you're wanting to do, and you're going to build it. But if it's a ready-made, just add water for a little equity to start off. Good money is good if you can get it.
Yeah, and there's a company called Personas that is. Anybody heard of them? Personas. They're doing holograms.
They had the Tupac, didn't they?
And they you go into a Home Depot or whatever, and there's a hologram saying, "Hey, whatever." Or most of them are like school lobbies, or like they have holograms that will do sign language for the hearing impaired and that kind of stuff, right? Great company. Hope they do really well, because I'm invested in them. But they did exactly what you're talking about. Is they took somebody else's technology and said, "Hey, I'm going to stamp it out over here," and essentially add water to your technology and do something different with it. And as long as you have, like, I invested in them, even though that wasn't their original technology, mainly because they had really good contractual agreements that gave them, that essentially gave them the right to that technology. So you got to have the contractual relationship in place before you go. Yep. Okay. Then yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be afraid to go raise money on that. Well, until you start, getting that inflection point, I would make it on your own as long as you can. Right? Until you start to see that inflection. And that's the sign where, now, I would start relationships with potential investors. Like, I send out a monthly update to, we're closing out funding, but at the end of this month, I'll still send out a monthly update to all potential investors, because I'm eventually going to be raising money again. And I want them to see all those traction points. Hey, we said we were going to do this, and we did this, and we said we were going to, so always be selling your company to the investors, even if you're not raising it.
Excellent. All right. Well, first of all, we have 2 more announcements, but first, let's give a huge round of applause for Brian. Awesome story. I appreciate another beer.
Yep.
All right, so, and it's funny, I just talked to Jill over there, and I wrote down, because I didn't see her till the end. So, Jill, you know what? She is the only startup grind speaker. You can find this on YouTube, so she has a great video. I think you flipped me off, 4 or 5 times?
I was going to do that when we got done, because when you mentioned AJ as an alum, I was sitting next to AJ.
I took my notes before you showed up, and you're shorter. So, and AJ sticks out, well, I guess with purple hair,
With the pants, okay, but my hair, seriously, I should stand up more than AJ. Yeah.
So, yes, no, seriously, look, there's my handwriting I took when I saw you. I was like, I need to mention this after. I'm not full of shit. So, yeah, you can check out her speak. So, tell me what you have going on November 11th to 13th.
So, Charlotte Startup Weekend is November 11th to the 13th. And tickets are on sale now. It's still early bird special, so it's $75 right now until, I want to say sometime mid-October. To be honest, I don't remember exactly when early bird ends, so you should check out the website. If you Google Charlotte Startup Weekend, it will come up. It's like charlotte.startupweekend.org, I think. But so it's a startup weekend. If you don't know, it is designed for early stage startup ideas. The earlier stage you are, the better and the more you're going to get out of the weekend. It is a 54-hour marathon. It is a lot of fun. You will kind of be delirious by Sunday night, but it's a ton of fun.
Andrew knows.
Yes.
He's agreeing.
Yes. You'll be back, right?
Am I a mentor again this year?
If you, yes.
You guys are that fucking desperate?
You know what? Actually, to be honest, you're one of our most popular mentors.
Okay.
Okay, so.
Here's your tip.
Yay! I think mostly because you swear at them a lot. They really seem to like that.
Okay, good.
By about hour
Say that
28,
again. My
they
wife
really
wasn't
like
listening
that.
because she hates that.
Hey, Liz, do you want to loan them to us for a whole weekend again? I think that was probably Liz's favorite
She
weekend.
said they like it when I swear at them, so.
I think it's Liz's favorite weekend, too.
Yes.
Yeah, see?
Anytime I'm gone, it's a good day for her.
I thought so, too.
Yeah.
So basically, it's designed for early stage startups. What you do is you come on Friday, and everybody who's attending is welcome to pitch an idea. And then the other attendees vote. You pair up in about 9 teams, and you start working on an idea. And those 9 teams will go all the way to Sunday and demo your idea. Now, if your idea is not selected, you're going to want to pair up on another team. So there is a huge amount of value on not working on your team. The reason why is because not only all weekend we have workshops and mentors that not only you get to talk to them about your idea as well, and you get to learn about we talk about business model canvassing, about ideation, about prototyping, about elevator pitches. These are all hugely valuable that come away from not just working on your idea, right? About the project that you're working on as well. This is also founder dating. It is extremely hard to build a company on your own. So you get to go founder dating. And then on Sunday, you get to pitch this idea in front of other entrepreneurs. Our judges are not looking for somebody who's created the best pitch. They're looking for a viable company. Does that make sense? Like, that's what the Sunday pitch is. If it's an actual viable company. That's the cool part. So it's not who gets up and does who's the most eloquent or who comes up with the best pitch or the best slide deck. It's if you've actually proofed out an idea. It's a lot of fun. We also feed you 7 actual meals.
And there's beer some of the time, right?
Some of the time. Sadly,
No,
sadly, I'm about to tell you the saddest part. Johnson C. Smith is a dry university.
Again, I'll bring my flask in.
So, this year will be at Johnson C. Smith University, which is, we get the brand new science building. If you've never been there, it is a beautiful building. Tarek in the back is the director of STEM Innovation. Has reserved us the entire building
Just
to
kidding, I'm not bringing
run
my
amok.
flask.
I know. So he's reserved us the entire building to run amok, except for apparently the dean's office, because he knows me, and he's going to lock the door. But other than that, it's a very, very, I know, right? But other than that, we have the whole building. It's a very beautiful campus, other than the drive part, because he knows us. The date? November 11th to the 13th, it kicks off Global Entrepreneurship Week.
Startup Weekend Charlotte. Just
Startup
Google
Charlotte,
that.
Weekend
There's
Charlotte. Please Google it. Come enjoy. It is a ton of fun. We will feed you 7 awesome meals for your $75. It goes up sometime middle of October. Check the website because I have no idea what date it is because I actually don't know what today's
Just
date is.
RSVP tonight or in the morning.
Yeah.
Don't worry about that.
I don't even know what today's date is, so I honestly can't tell you what date the tickets change. So that kind of explains to you what mode my brain is in. But it will eventually go up to $99, which is still a fantastic freaking deal for the amount of food that you're going to get all
Well,
weekend.
it's not even about the food. It's about the relationships. We just had a company pitch to us with my real job, quote unquote, and they were
You have a
founded.
real job?
Yeah. Well, one of many. But they came through, not Charlotte, but Atlanta's, and they're
Yeah.
raising right now $4.5 million. And it was some people who met that weekend and came up with that idea in 72, 96 hours, whatever it is. So,
Yeah.
awesome.
It's an amazing experience. I highly recommend it. Go check out the website.
Yeah.
We're still proving out some of the mentors and things like that, but
So I didn't make the cut.
whatever. So
Yeah,
it's a
check-
great experience. It's a ton of fun. It's fantastic. It is so good to see you.
Yeah, we got
You and I need to
David,
chat.
we got Andrew, we got a bunch more. The last other thing I'll say is next month's speaker. I know we haven't confirmed a time or a date, but whatever. I'm just putting you on the spot so you're committed. He's sitting right there. John is a real estate investor. You want to give a quick pitch on what you do, or you just want me to talk for you? I'll talk for you. Raising a fund. He's real estate investor. He's done a lot of cool shit. Venture capital. He's connected. Go to meetup.com. Startup Grind Charlotte. You'll get emails overview on what he does. But this dude's awesome. Brian's awesome. AJ's awesome. Jill's awesome. All of our speakers. So again, thank you to them, and thank you especially Brian for coming in together.
So you're saying I can ask this cat any question?
The cat is connected to the computer. You just type in the question, it will read his mind. There the answer comes.
You're the man! I've been looking for this for weeks.